Welcome to the Amazing Authorities Podcast, where game changers, visionaries, and category leaders share how they built their brands, platforms, and global influence. Your host is Mitch Carson, international speaker, media strategist, and creator of the Instant Authority System. If you're ready to learn from those who've done it and want to become the go-to expert in your space, you're in the right place.
Tracy Thompson is our guest today. Now, what makes him different than the other guests on the Amazing Authorities podcast is he has written a fiction book. All the authors I've interviewed, and there's been a number of them, and CEOs, mostly our authors, are in the nonfiction category. So we're going to get lost and intrigued today in the world of dystopian. Now, would you care to unpack that word and explain to people? Welcome to the show, Tracy. You know, a little bit of an yes. And I admire people that are able to write fiction. Like I've written quite a few nonfiction books myself or ghost written, and I've written a couple myself. But the idea of fiction scares me. And how did you?
And I'm like, sorry, I'm the complete opposite. Like, I like the idea of fiction because I can make it up as I go if I have to. Where with nonfiction, you have to fact check it and you have to make sure that everything is accurate.
Who cares about facts?
Well, I think you kind of have to if you don't want to get sued.
Yeah, true. But what inspired you to write this book? And where is it, by the way?
Oh, it's called The Mark.
The Mark, a novel.
You can get it on Amazon. Yep, it's under T.A. Thompson on Amazon. And what inspired me to write it? Well, there's a couple different things. One, I've always wanted to be a writer. Since the third grade, I used to write a lot there. And I always felt bad for my teacher because it was just awful. But it did set the stage for how my current work is, because it was dark. Even in the third grade, everything I wrote was very dark, and it could be considered possibly dystopian. I like darker fiction. I like darker humor. I want people to read the book and not have any idea where it's going. Like, have some good guesses and then have all of their guesses thrown on their head, because I don't like things that are predictable. I like to be surprised and shocked.
And you started writing as a kid, so you knew that this would be inevitable. And what was the pivot point, or what was the actual change to where, okay, I'm going to put pen to paper and get something in print and leave a little bit of a legacy? Because you have two books. You're writing another book also.
Yep. I actually wrote this book second and published it first. The other book I wrote a few years before that. I had stopped writing for quite a while just because I had a family quite young, and that was my focus. But one day my daughter just made a funny comment about something, and my brain just grabbed it and it ran with it. And I had this crazy idea for a story, a kind of a sci-fi story. And I sat down at the laptop and just started writing. And then my wife started complaining I was using the laptop too much, so I went out and I bought a whole new one so I would have my own and not be bothering her. And I literally sat down and wrote it. No outline, no planning. I just thought this is what would happen next, and that's how it came out on the page. And as I read it now, I mean, probably, I don't know, 10 years after I wrote it originally, I still just sit there and laugh at the darkest things, and it just makes my day. My wife rolls her eyes at me when I do it still, but I think it's great.
When you say dark, give me an example. Who's this character in your book?
So in The Mark, the character, her name is Alexandra. She is 25 years old, and it's set in a dystopian world 500 years in the future after a virus was released that causes everyone to die at the age of 22 or younger. So her being 25 makes her a freak of nature. And she goes through life with that understanding that she could die at any second. And it's really given her a different perspective on things than you or I would have, because we don't have that. We have long term goals and we understand that there's long term consequences. To her, there are not any. Why plan ahead when you're going to be dead? So she looks at everything through that lens. And in order to survive that mentally, she's had to take on a dark sense of humor and look at things from a perspective where some people would just think that she is crazy or just sick in the head. But that's how she copes. And in some ways, that's how I cope too. I have a very dark sense of humor and laugh at things that other people don't necessarily find funny.
What did you learn? Because most of the people who are listening are either authors or interested in writing. What did you learn? What would you share today that you didn't know when you decided to put pen to paper? And now it's not paper, but you get the idea.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. What I would share is writing the book is not the hard part. Everything after writing the book is so much more difficult than the actual creative process. Figuring out what the next steps were was very hard for me. I know this is going to sound very naive, but I literally finished my first book and was like, I'm a writer now. I don't have to work anymore. Not that I quit my job, but I just thought it would get picked up and published right away. That was crazy. Um, there's a lot that goes into it on the back end, much more than I was ever expecting.
Oh,
And I'm still,
amazing amount.
yeah, I'm still fumbling my way through that. But one of the things that I figured out was I don't know how to do it. I don't. Hire someone that does know how to do it, because then you waste less time, you waste less money, and you're more likely to have positive results and definitely more bang for your buck.
So you hired a book publicist, or did you hire a company to market it for you? What did you do specifically?
I hired a company to market it for me. So they handled building my website and getting me on podcasts and getting some different advertising out there, telling me how I should be doing things so that I'm more successful with marketing it and with sales as well.
Okay, and what are you doing other than podcasts? Are you on media or what? Have you done book signings? Have you gone to book shows?
I'm signed up to do a book show fairly soon. Keep in mind, I published this like 2 months ago,
Oh,
so
well, okay,
I
great,
haven't had too
congratulations.
much time to
Yeah.
do much of anything with it, other than try to get the marketing ball rolling and figure out this, what I'm supposed to do with it. Probably had too many meetings with my marketing company because I'm one of those people who needs to know why and how and what the next steps are, and I'm probably driving them crazy, but that's too bad. Um, as for what other things I'm doing besides podcasts, I am going to hopefully be doing a book fair here in September at one of the local bookstores. I love local bookstores, so it's fantastic. I'm looking at getting into some different farmers markets. That's actually a little tougher than I expected. But I heard, I think from your last guest or one of your last guests, you go out where people aren't expecting you and you're going to be unique, right? So if you're going to maybe a farmer's market, they're not expecting a novelist or a writer to be there selling their product, and it brings them in, it draws them in, and then you can start having conversations and start talking to them about your book.
One of the best nonfiction or fiction books I read was The Life of Pi. And the author, I don't know if you remember that, it was a New York Times bestseller, and it got a lot of traction. I met the author at a book fair in Los Angeles years ago, and he had a nice line or a queue of people getting the book or buying the book from him. I don't know if he was giving it away or selling it, but I thought the cover was interesting, and I hadn't read a fictional book in quite a while. And I grabbed it and read it, and I was drawn in. I loved the story, and then it was turned into a movie. I don't know if you remember The Life of Pi.
I remember seeing advertisements for the movie. I don't think I ever watched it. Wasn't that the one with the kid on the raft with the tiger?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
that's the
All right.
one. Yeah, and I was drawn into the story right away. His style pulled me in, and I've written nonfiction books, never fiction, but I loved the content, and then to later see it become a movie, I thought, wow, good for him. Good for him. And I remember I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was a really nice guy, signed the book. And I wish I still had it because I think I gave it away after I read it because, you don't go back and reference a fiction book so much as a nonfiction necessarily. It might have more shelf life. But I wish you the best with that. Wouldn't that be nice to get picked up as a movie to go, because dystopians, people love fantasy,
Yes, they do.
love Lord of the Rings. And did any of those books inspire you to write?
You're gonna hate me for saying this, but I had a hard time with Lord of the Rings, and it was just the Tolkien. He liked to talk. He liked to talk all right, and I read them and I liked them overall. But there were some parts I just got really stuck on. The Hobbit, loved it. I would read that. I would read that every year, and I definitely have read that one a few times.
Okay. So, I mean, were there particular authors that inspired you to write this and to say, I can
Uh,
do that? Or was it, I love that story and I want to replicate their success?
I mean, there was nobody in particular that was like, I need to model my my manuscript off of what they did. I felt like I had an idea and I ran with it. I filled it in how I wanted it to be. I don't I don't know. I don't like following in the footsteps of things that have already been done. I want to figure out my own way of doing it. I am definitely a reinvent the wheel kind of guy at times, which can bite me, but at other times it's so much less restrictive because I don't have to feel like, well, normal writers do it this way, so I need to do it this way. And then I've tried that at times, and I get so stuck on the process that I can't be creative and get the words out on paper because I'm afraid I'm doing it wrong. So, not having anybody that I was trying to emulate, I feel like made me write a better story than if I would have done it the other way around. But I think your original question was like, who do I really like to read? Stephen King, hands down. And it's because his stories usually don't have a happy ending. They
No,
they
he's
oh, I love that
he's
about him
dark.
though.
He's a little
Oh, I
dark.
very. My mom can't even read him anymore, but I loved it. I picked him up probably younger than I should have. I think the first one I read was Carrie, and then I read Christine, and they were just so dark, and neither one of those had a good ending, right? The bad guy ended up winning in both of those in some way, shape, or form. And I had a hard time wrapping my head around that for a while because isn't the good guy always supposed to win? And when I finally realized, like, no, it doesn't have to be that way, it was so freeing. And it opened up a whole new world of possibilities for how books could go from start to finish and how they could end.
And I didn't know this at the time, but when you talk about the book Christine, which then turned into a movie, and I had a friend, I mean, I still have a friend. His name is Bill Ostrander. Because that movie came out 40 years ago, he is still milking his celebrity. He was the guy that took a bat to the car. He was not
Oh,
the main
really?
character. He was the second. He was a bad dude in the movie. He had his lamb chop sideburns in the movie. And I knew him after we worked out at the same taekwondo school together and still were friends to this day. Because of that, and this is the uniqueness, this is where it splits with fiction versus nonfiction. You create a fan base. He still gets paid very, very well 40 years later to go and attend these shows where the main characters are invited to meet with fans that watch the movies or read the books. That's the difference between fiction and nonfiction. There's no fanfare for nonfiction writers. I think James Patterson would have a long queue of people wanting to shake his hand and get signed. Stephen King, J.K. Rowling, they're all in the fiction category, and 90% of the books sold in the world are fiction.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think that they capture so much more attention than a nonfiction writer?
I'm going to ask you the question after I answer it. I find it quite interesting because people relate to stories. People relate to fantasy or want to go in there. People, after the Avatar series came out, I think there are 2 or 3 of those movies. People want to go to that fantasy land, want to leave the planet and go live on, I forgot the name of the planet where, the people came in to invade it, and all of it's relatable to what's going on in the world today and has gone on for centuries, but wrapped in fantasy paper. So the answer is people get caught up in the fantasy and would like to project themselves. I grew up with a series, I'm a little bit older than you, well, actually 2 decades older, called Lost in Space. I watched that diligently every week because it took me to space. It took me to Fantasyland. There was Star Trek, which only ran 3 years, but it still lives huge today. People get caught in the fantasy of going someplace that they aren't today. It takes them out of their current problems, current situation, and brings them to another person's thinking and vision. Because it isn't theirs, they get caught in the story of that other person's vision and creativity or darkness or dystopian area. And, oh, wow, what would it be like to be, how many years forward is your book? 40?
500.
500 years forward. Wow, what a thought. Would you rather go to the future or go back in the past?
Well, I guess it would depend on the type of future. If we're talking the future from my book, I'll do the past. Thank you.
well, if we were, yeah, I mean, and that's because it's all fantasy. Whereas I think a lot of people would go to the future versus the past because it's already been documented. And maybe the futuristic books take us, it's scarier because we don't know what's going to happen versus if we went 500 years in the past, we knew what was happening then. A lot of body odor and bad teeth. And a few other, and they lived to the age of 45 max.
Well, that's another thing, though, is we think we know what happened back then, but where are all of our assumptions coming from? They're coming from other books that people have written.
Correct.
And, how much of their information is even true? How much of it is just what they're wanting us to see? There could be complete aspects of the world or that particular era that we have no idea about. Like,
and it is
I love reading about Rome. I have a big fat book back there about the first, I think, 1,000 years of Rome. And, she talks mostly about the senators and the armies and the different political interactions. But, we don't hear about what plebes were doing, what the Joe Smith was doing when he had to go to work or do his farming or whatever it was. And we've romanticized that idea, and that's why we want to go back there, because we want to be what's been portrayed to us. But in all likelihood, I would be on a farm somewhere hoeing up the weeds. I wouldn't be doing anything fun and cool.
Yeah, it wouldn't be glamorous. Yeah,
No.
And to go back, I think you talk about the times of the Romans. I don't know if I'd want to live that, or would I want to go forward? I mean, if you were to pick a time in history, you created your own reality in writing something that is so far in the future. We don't know what it's going to be. Yeah, I mean, Nostradamus thought he had an idea. Some people lean into his writings, and he was a futurist.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
you're a futurist, is what you are, in a sense. I mean, and writing this story about this character and what's going on.
A very dark futurist, yeah.
Okay.
I would hope that none of these things ever happen. That would be terrible for humanity and civilization. I definitely don't feel any connection with the character that caused the fall of humanity and civilization. Um, but I definitely understand where he was coming from. I was able to put myself in his shoes, and that's why I was able to write that part so well. It's funny because the prologue that I wrote wasn't even part of the initial manuscript. I had it beta tested, and they were like, "You need to add something here so it makes more sense." And I have so many people tell me that that's their favorite part of the book because it draws them in immediately. I just think that that's funny.
What do you feel? Why do people resonate with the stories? Because 90% of the book sales are fiction. People get
Mhm.
drawn into that. The fiction section in a bookstore is huge. You know, the nonfiction areas are covered, but even if you go into the airports today, the fiction area dominates.
Well, two reasons. I'm going to give you the shorter answer first. And I think it's kind of what you said. We already know what happened, right?
Hmm.
So why do I want to buy a book where I know what happened overall? Um,
A history book.
there, exactly. I mean, there's some books on my bookshelf where, like the Roman one, I have one about Napoleon, I have something about Alexander the Great, and then Hannibal. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I knew what happened at the end, but I wanted more details on those specifics. But I wouldn't like go and search out, you know, certain specific ones. I would just think it was boring. But you get a book, a fictional book, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know the ending of that book. Everything in that is going to be new unless it's some type of historical fiction. But even then, the story within that history is still fresh and new. And it allows you, it's escapism. It allows you to get out of your life and live vicariously through the characters and do something you wouldn't normally be able to do. That's actually one of the reasons that I write. My job's pretty boring, it's pretty monotonous. So I can stop that and then start writing and essentially take myself somewhere completely different and live through my characters as I create them and put them in crazy scenarios.
Is there a third book coming? Or is the first book that is now getting, you said, edited or looked at?
Mhm.
Tell us about that one.
So that one is called Arcing. That's the one that my daughter gave me an idea for. Um, that one has ridiculous characters. Like I made them that way on purpose. I wanted them to really stand out and just have you scratch your head at their appearance and the way they acted because they're ridiculous and crazy. And then you have like one or two normal people in there who are trying to relate to them and just work within the confines of all this ridiculousness. And personally, I think that's funny. But it's while I'm laughing, it's super dark humor. Like there's an attempted suicide in there. There's some extreme bulimia. There's telekinetic powers. There's murder. There's drunken fool in there. Um, and I mean, it goes real dark. But I tried to add that ridiculousness even to lighten it up a little bit, so it wasn't all just beating you to death with depression. So, and that was my first one, and that was the one that I sat down and just wrote with no outline and just it just progressed as I felt like that it should. And you can tell by reading it, yeah, that's definitely my first book, but it's a fun read. I mean, reading it again and editing it again, I still sit there and laugh at it.
When will that be released?
I'm hoping in the next 2 3 months.
Okay, cool. And is there a third after that?
Yep, I'm
Okay.
halfway through another book. At this point in time, I've called it Liber Animarum. So that's Latin for the Book of Souls. And this one, it's going to be horror, and then it's going to kind of flip on its head and become fantasy about halfway through. So I don't want to just write dystopian books or like action thrillers or horror. I really want to challenge myself to do several different genres. All of them have to be fiction, though, because, like I told you earlier, I don't have the patience for nonfiction and fact checking.
Yeah, AI can help, but it certainly isn't the be all end all. And the
No.
facts need to be checked. When AI
Mhm.
claims it's factual, go back and check it yourself. I think
I've
you have
gotten into
that data.
several arguments with AI, so I don't know how much I would trust it to help me at all.
Oh, okay. Well, that's an interesting perspective. So, what's your advice for the first time author or somebody that's thinking about writing a book in the
Don't get
fiction category?
don't get overwhelmed with the process. Just write it. Write it, and you can always fix it on the back end after all of your thoughts are out and after you see how it flows. And definitely while you're working on it, but while you're writing it, but you're off doing other things, continue to think about it. Some of my best ideas came from when I hadn't touched the book in a month, but I continuously thought about it and came up with new scenarios, new ideas, new ways of how the world worked. And it definitely made the book stronger.
Okay, cool. Well, Tracy, where do people get in touch with you? Is at T.A. Thompson or give us your place.
Yeah, my website is tathompsonwriter.com. And then I have a Facebook account. It's t.a.thompson. I'd love to see from everybody and get your comments and let me know how you like the book.
And we can find your existing book. Hold it up one more time.
Sure. It is like every book on Amazon.
Oh, there you go. Well, that's where we'll find the mark, and it'll take you down this dystopian route. Well, you've been a great guest. My first fiction author. That's great. And if there are
That's
more of
exciting.
you, send them my way, because I admire somebody that writes fiction, because I live in the world of nonfiction and facts, being a journalist by background. So looking at all the facts and seeing and experiencing somebody that's able to go there and the story. Well, I wish you the best, and hopefully we'll be able to go to the movies and see your book in the movies. Wouldn't that be
Oh, I
nice?
would love that. I'll even buy the popcorn.
Okay. Tracy, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to the Amazing Authorities Podcast. If today's episode inspired you, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps more experts like you rise to the top. For behind-the-scenes access and free resources to boost your authority, head to MitchCarson.com. Until next time, stay amazing.